Good morning, P6. Welcome to Monday. For today's comprehension text, for those of you who have chosen to do the higher or middle level comprehension, the Runt, well, what we're going to do is we're going to read through today's comprehension together. So it would be a really good idea if you downloaded a copy of the comprehension now for you to follow, or of course you can follow it on the screen. I'm going to read it with you now, and then we'll have a look at what it is that you're going to do today. Now, our story is actually taken from a very famous book today called Charlotte's Web. Some of you have maybe read the book or even watched the film. But this is our story today. It's called The Runt. Let's read it together. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. "Well," said her mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it." "Do away with it?" shrieked Fern. "You mean kill it, just because it's smaller than the others?" Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. "Don't yell, Fern," she said. "Your father is right. The pig would probably die anyway." Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. "Please don't kill it," she sobbed. "It's unfair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you will have to learn to control yourself." "Control myself?" yelled Fern. "This is a matter of life and death, and you talk about controlling myself?" Tears ran down her cheeks, and she took hold of the axe and tried to pull it out of her father's hand. "Fern," said Mr. Arable, "I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along." "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," replied Fern, still hanging on to the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I ever heard of." A queer look came over John Arable's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. "All right," he said. "You can go back to the house, and I will bring the runt when I come in. I'll let you raise it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be." When Mr. Arable returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelt of coffee, bacon, damp plaster, and wood smoke from the stove. "Put it on her chair," said Mrs. Arable. Mr. Arable set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on the roller towel. Fern came slowly down the stairs. Her eyes were red from crying. As she approached her chair, the carton wobbled, and there was a scratching noise. Fern looked at her father. Then she lifted the lid of the carton. There, inside, looking up at her, was the newborn pig. Now P6, what I want you to do before we look at today's task, I want you to go and read through that story at least one more time. And think about what it is that you're reading. Think about maybe the more difficult words. So if you're not sure about words, for example, like what does it mean if something is sopping? What does it mean, this expression, it will never amount to anything? What is a hog house? This story is an American story, so there are certain words in it that perhaps we wouldn't use. Can you think of a British word for hog house? Can you think of the British word instead of using the word sneakers? What word would we use instead of sneakers? So have a read through the story at least one more time. And then I want you to have a think about today's task. For today's task, we're going to practice our reciprocal reading skills, and today we're going to think about being a questioner. Last week we practiced clarifying, today we're going to practice questioning. So today it's your opportunity to write some questions from our story. So what I would like you to do today is write 8 different questions. Now, I don't want all of the questions to begin with the same words. We know that when we write questions, there are lots of different question words that we could begin a question with. Words like who, what, where, when, why, which, how. There are other words as well. What I would like you to do today is start off by writing 4 questions, and each one needs to begin with a different question word. Don't forget to put a question mark at the end of your question. Now, what's really important is that we can find the answers within the story, or we can work out the answers from within what we've read. So think carefully about, will I be able to work it out from the story? So writing 4 questions that begin with these sorts of question words. Then question 5 and question 6, I would like you to make up 2 multiple choice questions. So write your question and then give us 3 possible answers, but only one of these answers is actually correct. So make up a question, give 3 possible answers, only one of them will be correct. For your final 2 questions today, I would like you to make up 2 true or false statements. So write a statement based on the story and then ask the reader of your question, is it true or false? So for example, if I was to give the statement, Fern was 9 years old, is that true or false? Well, somebody would have to go back into the story and go and find out, what does it tell us about Fern's age? So P6 for today, go and read through the story a couple of times. Then do your best to write your questions. If you get all of that done, then on the home learning page, I've given you an extension task. And for today, well, in our story, Fern is becoming the owner of a pet pig. I wonder if you've ever owned a pet of your own. Maybe you have a pet now or you've had a pet in the past. What I would love you to do today is come up with a poster, design a poster telling other people how you might look after a dog or a cat, a budgie or a hamster, a rabbit, whatever type of animal it is perhaps that you've had as a pet. Or perhaps you could have an imaginary pet. What about having a pet dragon or a pet unicorn? Maybe you're like Hagrid in the Harry Potter stories and you have got a pet dragon to look after. Could you make up some rules how to look after that pet dragon? You could do I would love you to make a poster. You could design it on a page, or perhaps you could use your ICT skills and design it using Microsoft Word and clip art. How would you look after a particular pet? That's your extension task for today. And if you do manage to complete it, we would love to see your posters. Email them to your teacher, please. Go and read through the story one more time and then have a go at today's task. Don't forget to do some book club reading as well, P6.